They don't like taking phone calls, and they want you to respond right away.
I think that I've learned from our millennials, the millennials that I work with, is that work-life balance is achievable.
I think one of the things that gets lost with millennials is a lot of the things they want, a lot of their core values, a lot of their goals are something we should aspire to, not look down on.
I think that the millennials want to actually understand how the baby boomers actually don't have an email.
A lot of people say don't have expectations, you're going to be let down, and I think that's bad advice. I think it's okay to have expectations if they're clarified and mutually agreed upon. We want to have passion and purpose in what we do. That's how engagement in the workplace gets better. That's how productivity and employee retention happens.
What I've learned from millennials is that initially their communication with you is pretty much virtual. You know, it's on different platforms, either text messages, could be on Twitter, could be on Facebook, whatever. And I've learned to accept that and grow with that. And then eventually, they do want to talk to you. So it gets to a point where initially it starts off that way, where it's a hands-off approach. And then once they get to know you and trust you, sometimes they don't want to text. Sometimes they don't want to email. It gets back to that old, in my business, in real estate, belly-to-belly selling. And then they want to know who I am, somewhat values I stand for, the environment, socially, and what do we bring to the table. So it's interesting in how what we thought millennials want and how I've had to shift in my business practices, almost like be a chameleon and learn to grow with them and what their needs and wants are.
I think some of the best advice I've ever been given is that it's okay if you don't know the next step. I know I've always grown up anticipating what the next step in my life is going to be, my career. You're told to have this whole path and everything you're supposed to do, and I always was nervous that I didn't know the next step, but that was the best piece of advice I've ever gotten.
There's three kinds of people in the world, right? There's the kids who are really good-hearted kids, kids that, just have the know-how and wisdom to be kind and sweet to other kids, okay? Very small minority. They're out there, but they have it. Then there's the kids who are the complete opposite. They're just jerks. And a lot of these kids that are jerks, frankly, are probably jerks because of the role models they have at home. Okay, not an excuse, but a reality of the situation. Influences they have with friends, peer pressure, things like that, but they're jerks. Okay? But the big group, this is the one I want to focus on tonight. The big group are the kids that don't know what to do. They don't understand these other kids. And when we don't understand other people, when we make assumptions about other people, we tend to say weird things. We tend to say odd things. And the example in this movie, in one of the opening scenes, one of the kids is given the kid with the facial deformations, his name is Augie, a tour of the school, and the kid looks at Augie and says, "What kind of food do you eat?" As if that would have anything to do with facial deformations. I love having the opportunity to lift people up and make people feel unstuck and that they can move forward in their life and career and develop the necessary interpersonal skills to do so. Kevin, do you manage people?
Yes.
And do you ever talk to the people you work for about mindfulness techniques and or the ways they could use mindfulness?
That has never come up, no.
Would you like to?
It would be an interesting topic, I think, worth exploring.
Do you have, without using a name, do you have someone in mind, we'll call them person X, that has a habit that is either not productive in the workplace or disruptive in the workplace that you would...
I can think of 100 person X's.
Okay, so give us an example.
I know of a person who works under me who's constantly on Facebook all day long. And he's been told repeatedly that he needs to put his phone away, he can't have it on in front of the student, and it's just not getting through to him.
Is there a consequence to that person? If they eventually keep not listening to you, is there a consequence?
There are consequences in place, yes.
Okay, so he or she could potentially lose their job eventually if that behavior doesn't stop, is that?
At some point, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you, Kevin. How many of you here that work with millennials, if you were to walk by someone's desk and see them on the computer, would worry or have worried at some point that, are they doing work? Are they surfing the net? Are they on social media? How many people either worry about that or have worried about that? How much does it mean if you had, I don't care if it was Mike or anybody else, a manager, someone on a higher level than you at the bank, walks into your office and says, Kate, I got a problem. I would love to get your feedback on how to solve it. Do you not feel like $1 million in that situation? Right? And frankly, the better example would be someone who does it when it's not even your department. Maybe it's not has nothing to do with marketing or sales. It could be an operational question. Now think about that for a second. Let's not pigeonhole people communication-wise. Kate, she's in marketing. Well, I would bet a lot of money she knows a heck of a lot more about life in professional business than marketing. But people probably don't ask her because that's your department. That's your know-how. That's your knowledge. So the point I'm trying to make is empower millennials, empower people that work for you, give them a voice, walk up to them. I tell parents with their kids, I tell parents, come home from work, go up to your 8th grade child and say, oh my God, I had the worst situation at work with my boss today. Here's what happened. What do you think I should have done? Like an 8th grader is going to be like, huh, you're asking me? Why not?
What I found in dealing with agents over the years that I've trained and I've mentored, rather than being dictatorial to them, I would allow them to take my position and teach me. And then I would also try to recognize what are their other skills, try to think outside the box and maybe put them in a different place in the company or reassign them or give them different responsibilities, which would empower them. And then I've even gotten to the point of having a contract of understanding that I would ask them to draft regarding their responsibilities, and they would sign it and I would sign it. And that was something that they could look, and some people would help make that shift with, others it wouldn't, but it's something that I learned years ago.
I asked Matt about habit change. I asked Kevin about habit change. Think about it. Why are you going to change a habit? Why do people decide to go on a diet at New Year's every year? Why are they going to go in the health club more? Why do people do these things? Anybody? Make a change. But they do it for a reason. There is a pain center. So if someone goes on a diet, they don't like how they look. Maybe. Someone wants to work out, they don't feel strong enough, they feel tired. There has got to be some motivator. But the reason why people don't change their behaviors most of the time is because that's not enough. Ultimately, if I wake up and I go, you know what, I don't really like how I look. I need to go on a diet. I need to work out more. Sounds good. People like to hear themselves say it because they know they're supposed to say it. But what's going to make the change? There has to be that carrot dangling. It can be an extrinsic motivator, it can be an intrinsic motivator, but there's got to be the carrot. If you want behavior change, you got to have the motivator, but you got to have the why, and it's got to be clear. And I'll tell you what doesn't count as a why. What doesn't count as a why is, I want to be more physically fit. That's not the why. It's not. You know what's a why? For people that are overweight, we know this. It's unfair in society. There's conceptions and perceptions about people that are overweight. So if someone wants to lose weight and they said, hey, I want to lose weight because I want a chance at a promotion. I don't want to be stuck in this job, and I think I need to lose weight to be more physically fit to get that promotion. Well, that's a why. But you've got to have a tangible, articulated why. It's called motivational interviewing. Does anybody know what motivational interviewing is? It is what my entire training and coaching philosophy is based on. Okay? It's something I've studied, it's something I practice. People use motivational interviewing, it's in the medical profession. It's used very often with medical doctors, counselors, therapists. And what they do, what they use motivational interviewing for, is to create change talk. But the key to motivational interviewing is that you let people realize the things on their own. You know, instead of saying, going up to someone, you know what? You're on social media all day, Matt. You need to change. You need to stop doing that. You know, instead of pointing out people's flaws and explaining to them and putting in their face all the damage, you use motivational interviewing so people come to the conclusions on their own. So people do critical thinking on their own. That is your initial approach. How do you start a conversation? When you get a telemarketer calling you, you know. because they'll start out with some kind of generic small talk that you can smell coming a mile away, and you're like, I'm done. I'm done with you. I know it, okay? Now, we want to be direct with people, but we don't want to be abrupt with people. The two-word phrase is be curious. When you do not know why someone is behaving the way they do, when you don't know why someone's attitude or behavior won't change, be curious. Think to yourself, what's going on here? Ask questions. Ask them. Get information. Don't assume. Don't use bias. Don't label. Ask questions. If you can get people, like Ed said, trusting you and comfortable to proactively, unsolicited do that, that's as good as it gets. Think about it. To me, if you have a relationship with any human being in your life where they feel comfortable walking up to you in a respectful, kind, loving, and supportive way, giving you critique on how you could be a better human being, you've hit the mother lode. That is so few and far between. So if you've established that kind of relationship with your staff, you're doing it right. Does everybody here know what a 360 review is? Yes? 360 review? Okay, 360 review is when the employees get to review the employer or the managers. Okay? I want to take it up a notch. I want us to do a 360 review. I mean, it doesn't have to be a 360 review. You get the point. Okay? Because to me, guys, I want you to have that confidence and trust in me that if there's something I could be doing better personally to manage or support you, I don't want you to be scared. If you're sitting at your desk saying, God, should I walk into Mike's office and tell him this? Boy, I don't know. I don't want him to be mad at me when it comes to give me a raise or promotion. I don't want him to remember this and go, well, remember that time you told me I need to be better? I don't want you to hold it against me. If you're sitting there at your desk thinking that, don't, because you've got nothing to worry about.
I encourage other landlords the same thing. Don't you be the one who's always interviewing the tenants. Let the tenants interview you as well. And that's what makes a good relationship.
Everybody in this world, from a communication, engagement, influence, relationships could be so much more powerful if people were willing to be vulnerable.
That's why I tell people, don't walk on eggshells all the time. And we see that all with mindfulness. I see people that you don't know how to interact with them, you don't know how to communicate with them, and you want to walk around on eggshells. And that just accomplishes nothing. In fact, that makes matters worse, that I find.
It's easy for us to tell people to walk on eggshells. But if you are not modeling the behavior, if you are not creating the culture of trust, it's not about words. In our world, it's about actions. We know this. Words are meaningless. I say, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. You don't have to be the best looking person in the room. You don't have to be the strongest person in the room, but you better be able to have a conversation with someone, and you better be able to know how to connect and influence and engage another human being, because if you can't do that, you're going to have a lot of trouble.
I think the biggest takeaway is how you've made us aware as to, again, speaking to the millennials, and how that seems to be changing. We all have this perception as to how millennials think and what they want and how they act, and that may have been the case a year or two ago, but we're actually seeing some shift in how they want to communicate with us.
I think as a deaf person, more use of the PowerPoint slides would have been more helpful for me. I'm a very visual learner, so that would be my constructive criticism.
I think in your role play with Kevin, inviting somebody to find solutions to their own behavior to get more people on board is something that I'll definitely take back.